Welcome, Geoff Teall, to the podcast, The Horse's Advocate.
Thank
Thanks.
you for having me.
What was wrong with our mothers that wanted to name us Jeff with a G?
They were extra smart, apparently.
Apparently. Uh,
Apparently.
so this podcast is all about helping horses thrive in a human world. And it's more on the horses and how to make them healthier. But some of the things that I'm hearing about you is you blend that with your skills as a trainer to make the horse a better horse as well as the riders a better rider. And everything I read about you is all about helping these riders. But I've known you for probably 35 years and done work for you for a long time. And I know that you're always working on keeping your horses and trying to make them the best they can be as well. And I wondered if you want to just take a moment and tell us your philosophy about who you are and what you do with these riders and these horses and kind of blend the story together. So go.
So I guess the probably the most important thing about anything that any of us do is to bear in mind that everything has to start and end with the horse and the horse's welfare. And I think that particularly in this day and age, it seems like we're getting further and further away from that. Uh, we had a conversation the other day, but I know I've been lucky enough, and you've been lucky also to have been in the business a long time and been in the business when it was a different time, uh, a slower time, and a little bit less competitive. So I think that we have a big advantage. So anything that I do that relates to training horses or training riders always has to come back to the horse. And as obvious as that seems, I think that oftentimes people miss that. And when you're talking about the horse, you're talking about what happens in the barn first and foremost. And just as in with people, the same thing. I think that anything having to do with the health of the horse or health of a person has to start with, what we eat and how we fuel ourselves and how we take care of ourselves physically. And then that leads to a healthier mental state as well.
Yeah.
That's the philosophy.
Yeah. Well, some of your philosophies I think are pretty critical. I've did a little digging on, even though I've known you for a long time, there's a lot I don't know about you. There's probably a lot about me that you don't know either. But you talk about some of the most valuable things in keeping what we do working. And I think one of the principles of your philosophy is keep things simple. And
Sure.
I started something, a word called complexicate. And the people who've been with me for a while know that complexicate is a word that means we try to make things more complicated than they need to be, usually just to make ourselves look better or more important.
At
And
least to ourselves.
at least to ourselves. And in taking care of our horses, or in your aspect, training riders, you've probably seen trainers and the whole industry try to become more complicated than it needs to be. Where did that kind of philosophy come from? Is that just our old age, or knowing what we knew when things were simpler, or things you've tried don't work? What do you think's going on?
For me, I was very fortunate to have great trainers. Like I actually had dinner with George Morris last year sometime, and it was he and myself and Sue Ash. We were having dinner, and we got about halfway through, and George said, I think we're the three last living students of Gordon Wright, which was a little startling for sure. But I go back to Gordon, and I was lucky enough to work not only with Gordon, but work with him under a lady named Mike Kelly. Um, and my background actually is fox hunting and riding cross country. and never went to a horse show until I was 16 years old. So I had the best of both worlds in that I had Gordon Wright, who was at that time, and I think still probably the best teacher that we've had, um, and combined with a more normal approach, which was, uh, riding cross country, riding at a um, normal economic level, and not getting all wrapped up in the horse show thing. So for me, it starts with great teachers and great background. From there, I think one of the things that Conrad Humfeld said years ago to me was, the most important thing if you want to have longevity in this business is to just stay on the list. And
Mm.
that's what I've tried to do. And so far have managed to. And I think the longer that you are on that list, the more you realize how unimportant you are and how uncomplicated things are if you allow that to happen. And you make things as simple as you can. Anytime something begins to get complicated, I'm old enough and experienced enough now to come to a screeching halt and take a look at it and cut things in half and make it simpler. And then I usually get much further, much faster than I was. I don't know if any of that makes any sense.
It's as he said, stay on the list. I think it just stay in the game, but don't get mired down in the game either. Remember why you got in the game. Remember the fun, the enjoyment. I ask my colleagues every time you go to the barn, is it to look at the numbers, how much money you're going to make that day? Or is it the interaction with the horse at the most basic level? What gets you up out of bed every morning?
Right.
And this work ethic that I think we both share, I think is from our generation, but I think it's more than that. I think you can find people from the most young generations who find a passion in what they do. And I think the passion drives us because you and I were joking. We're old. we don't like to think that we're old. We're only a few years apart. And yet we're looking forward into the future, 10, 20 years from now. And we've seen people like George Morris or, Dr. Steele, who's 92 out there still working. There are people out there who took their passion to the very end. And how do you
Absolutely.
find that? How do you develop that in people?
It's very interesting because we're in the middle, as you know now, in the middle of a sort of a management change. And so I've been watching and trying to understand how the next generation is managing things and working things out and whatnot. And through the transition, I find that at 6:30, I'm the one who's at the barn. Um, I can't produce results, which is the least important part, but I can't feel good about what I'm doing with the horses and or with the people unless I'm around it. I have to be there, and things are changing every second of the day. You get up in the morning and you have a very clear idea of exactly how things are going to go. And the only thing that I do know is that that's probably the one direction that they won't go. So at 6:30, this is what's supposed to happen. I'm pretty sure that it's going to be a choice from many other things. So I need to be there. I need to see the horses. As an example, today we have one that we talked about sugar content and whatnot the other day. We're struggling with a little bit of uh, variation in her blood levels. And, I was there when she was going out to the paddock. And I thought, okay, well, she's a little overweight now for where she should be with what our blood work last week told us. If I had not have been there, I would not have seen that. So I'm finding with uh, it's interesting, but I'm finding with this newer generation, they're managing through text, which is
Mm.
fascinating to me. There's lots of lists, there are lots of texts, there's a lot of communication. But when I look around, it's me and the guys and the horses. And we are all, we have a plan. And from the moment we get there, we're adjusting that plan according to what's actually happening, not what we plan to have happen. So again, that's a very long way of saying that I think that in order to do something well, you have to be present and you have to pay attention. And it's the simplest details that are going to make the most significant results.
Thank you. I've been trying to promote this concept of uh, adjusting the dials. And that's something that you and I would understand because as we, laid in bed at night and turned on our AM radio transistor radios, we would tweak the dial just a little bit to bring the
That's a great
signal in
analogy.
better.
Yeah.
Cousin Brucey out of New York City. But kids these days don't understand that. It is just a strict number streaming service. And what you just said was you go out there, you observe, you take in data, and you adjust the dials. You're adjusting
exactly right.
what needs to be done. And this is at the most rudimentary level of caring for our horses or ourselves. And I think that's lacking. I think in your texting analogy, what I call one-dimensional communication, my colleagues or trainers or even horse owners will take a look at the sheet of data in front of them and try to adjust according to the numbers there. I don't think you can do it.
No. It's a two-piece puzzle. You have to put the puzzle together and then you have to watch the puzzle not work.
Yeah.
and fix it as you go. And there's again, the simpler the concept and the more basic the concept, to me, the more important it is to that whole puzzle. A funny example today, but I watched a kid. She has a horse it's a good horse, but he's a little bit quirky. And I was out of town last week and he developed a problem walking to the ring or whatever. So she led the horse down and she was trying to get on the horse at the ring. And he was just moving every time he's a huge horse and she's a good kid, 12 years old. Anyway, long story short, she was trying to get on the horse and she'd get everything all set up and he would move a step and then she would have to move everything again and try and do it. And so it was a great lesson for that kid because I got to go down to the ring. I got off my horse, made her hold my horse. I, jerked the horse around a little bit, if I'm being honest, and put the thing down and I got on the horse and I said, look, he's just having fun with you. And he was having the best time torturing that girl. But that was so much more valuable to her. This is the point. That was so much more valuable to her than a 45-minute riding lesson. Like she actually learned something about horses today. Wow. So that's a good thing, But again, had I not been there around it, I would not have seen it. I would have missed the opportunity to impart that lesson to her. That's a lesson that's going to stick with her for a long time because she felt stupid. When you feel stupid is when you learn the most.
Well, she felt stupid, but she also was frustrated, which is a word I hear all the time in the horse world. I'm frustrated. I don't understand. I'm trying to do this. He's not responding to me. And I find that a lot of people are trying to work on the horse instead of working on themselves. And that stems from, I think, confidence. And I know you're big into confidence. I love that idea. And we all are not confident. We're not born confident, but we develop confidence. And we develop confidence by getting mentors like you around us to say, you can become confident and you have to set your rules and boundaries with this horse and then connect with it. At least that's what I'm hearing you say with this example. How do you find all the generations, older, middle, younger, whatever, how do you find people in general in their ability to turn inwards and figure out what's wrong with them and fix themselves to become better riders or better horse owners?
For me, that's an easy answer. If they can't arrive there fairly quickly, we find alternative solutions for them. I have really good people and I have really good horses, and I'm very lucky that way. But, I don't have interest in anyone that doesn't have interest And I'm happy to, everybody has their own place. And when people come to ride with me, we sit down and I always say, look, let's give it a whirl. If I'm the right person for you, that's great. If I'm not, or if you're not the right person for me, that's also fine. We'll just call a spade, and I'll help you find something that's more appropriate. But um, back to the confidence idea, whether you're uh, training dogs or you're training horses or you're training people, all of which I think are exactly the same. Over the years, I started out as a perfectionist, slave driver, detail oriented. And, over the years, I've evolved into somebody that, you know, when I'm dealing with any of those, horse, dog, or person, I'm trying to create a good result that I can reward. And I think that people learn from reward, horses learn from reward, dogs learn from reward much more than they learn from correction. So it's arranging things and giving, creating experiences that build that confidence, and that's what gets people to go, and animals.
That brings such a curiosity in my mind. Was that something that slowly evolved over your career, or was there all of a sudden one day, boom, it happened? Because I started off much like you in the beginning, thinking that I could correct all the problems in horses through dominance.
Right.
And, slowly we found out that that didn't work.
Yeah.
Rewards are so much better.
I think it's an evolution. Another thing that I use a lot in clinics, and I change the two words, and I tell people that I train people and I teach horses. And just by changing those two words, it changes the perspective of everybody.
Yeah.
One of the most satisfying things for me is if I have a horse or a young horse or a horse that I've developed, and I give them the skills that they need or teach them the skills. I don't train them, I teach them. Teach them the skills that they need to survive in the world. Those are the horses that I'll see 5, 10, 12 years later that are still out there enjoying their life because they understand their job and they understand how to do it and they understand that they can do it.
Mm-hmm.
So they feel good about themselves and they're able to deal with so much more. It's so funny, all the different things that you learn. Somebody once said to me years ago, and this is one of those aha moments, I think. Somebody said to me, I had an older horse, and they said, when you train horses, the older they get, the more difficult they are to train.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked away and I thought, "Oh, that doesn't sound right to me." That should be the exact opposite. But again, if you're using strength and force or dominance or whatever to get the result, I think that that's a true statement. So that was one thing that caused me to sort of slow down and look what I was doing and try and turn that around so that I was actually teaching these horses skills that they could use so that the opposite was true. It became easier to train them and ride them. And that has become the case. The horses I've had, 11, 12, 13 years that are, they're just a piece of cake. We're all on the same page.
From my experience just the other day, working on these very horses you're talking about, which I've done for years, some of them, I walked up to one horse. He's so funny. I won't mention any names, but he was on the outside large horse next to a roan pony, big guy. And I walked up and he's in the back, like nostrils flared, eyes bugged. Here comes a stranger. I need to run. And I'm thinking to myself, am I even going to be able to get the halter on this horse? But I open the door and I work on myself and getting my energy low and calm. And I looked at this horse and I say, we've done this before. And he looks at me and cocks his head and he says, I think I do know you. And then when I got the halter on and I know what I did before I got the halter on. I'm at the door and he's in the back. I just point to my cheeks like this. I'm going to do the T.
That's awesome.
He goes, Bingo, connected the dots. It was so funny. I go in there and I start working. He says, "Oh my God, where have you been?"
Yeah. But you learn to read them if you pay attention and if you hear. And I listen to a lot of stuff about dogs, and that's what they're always talking about, the energy that it's more about your own energy around the animals than it is. And the same with the people. The people are exactly the same, except they're a little trickier to teach.
Yeah.
There's the whole verbal communication thing.
Yeah, it's their belief system. If a horse believes that you are going to be the devil and you're not going to be good, I hate men, I hate vets. And I walk in and I say, "Look, I know you're talking to me, but how about call waiting? Let's put that call on waiting and describe that I'm not that man. I'm not that vet. I'm somebody different." And people, they're not willing to say, "Okay, maybe you are something different. Maybe you do have a different idea. Maybe your political beliefs could be different. And I might be able to learn something." People just shut down. But the horse, if you catch that moment and they say, "Wow, you're listening to me," boy, you can set up some great conversations with them.
It's amazing.
It's just amazing. But, that's us. We've been around horses, tens of thousands of horses, if not more. What do you say to the new person, the little girl, the little boy who's out there and trying to connect with this? "Oh, I love my fuzzy pet." And you're like, "No, no, no. It's a real horse with thoughts and feelings." How do you approach that? How do you teach them?
Again, I think it's just an evolution. You teach them about training, you teach them about learning, you teach them about listening, and that's a little bit of an age-related thing, but it's amazing how far you can get and how much you can accomplish given enough time just to sort of keep going down that path. And the kids really get it and they learn. And, I don't have a lot of students anymore by choice. And the ones that I do have are the ones that are very receptive to that. And they're so much fun to teach. And that's what makes it interesting. As I said, it's interesting to give horses the skills they need to survive, and it's interesting to give kids the respect for the animals that they need to really understand and appreciate how lucky they are to be involved in the sport. And it's such a, what's the word I'm looking for? We're just so lucky to have this opportunity in our lives to work with these animals and learn from these animals.
There's a depth to it, isn't there? It's
Yeah.
nothing. It's not like, "Hey, I'm going to learn backgammon or checkers." And yeah, there's strategies in chess. We get that. But with a horse, you're committed to making a teammate, even if it's for just a small period of time. And it's so hard for people to build those relationships. And I find that people who go to the barn who absolutely enjoy being with their horse, they're all focused on the relationship they have, not in the needs that they have as, "I'm incomplete without you." No, you're both complete, but together you synergize. And that's really fun for me.
Yeah. I agree with that.
You'd mentioned about management and the management issues. I assume it was the Hunter Jumper Association. And I have my American Veterinary Medical Association, and what they're trying to do to, what's the word I'm thinking of? Blend new societal norms with the old passion that we used to have as veterinarians, or you as a horse trainer. And they're trying to bend over backwards to make the life perfect for these new individuals. And I don't know about you, but I don't think life will ever be perfect. I think hitting adversities and challenges makes us better. But in my profession, they just want to make everything perfect. The best salary, the best working conditions, the best work-life balance. I think they're going to turn out to be miserable as veterinarians. It's just my thoughts. And
No, I think that our sport's going in a very, very bad direction in an effort to protect these kids and make sure that nothing goes wrong and they have no adversity. And, as trainers, we're not allowed to speak harshly or touch them to demonstrate something. I mean, there's so many things now that we can't do, which I don't pay any attention to the rules. I do what I think is right. and I'm very comfortable with that. But I think we're doing a huge disservice to these young kids today, and it's, it's the society and everything else. But uh, you need to, all of that adversity is going to happen at some point, and you're a lot better off to get it out of the way early when you can learn and understand and make adjustments in what you do and how you do it. Anyway,
I
we're going
think
in a bad direction.
I think
And we're
giving the
hurting the very people we're trying to help.
but but adversity in everything, plants, all animals, everything helps us grow.
Yeah.
But if the adversity comes from some evil spot, obviously that's no good.
No.
I'm stuck and pausing in this because almost every issue that comes to me in journals and magazines, they talk about this work-life balance and what's happening with our veterinarians, both small animal and large. And I find that the quality of veterinary care is being more focused on making sure everything's right instead of stopping and looking at the animal and saying, how can we prevent this? It's the thrust of my whole idea here. So what would happen if we prevent it? I mean, I know you look at your own health. I know some of the things you do with your horses is more about prevention. Not that you hate veterinarians, but why have that expense of that and doctors when you don't need it?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about it's all so important, the how you feed your horses, how they get turned out or don't get turned out, and where they get turned out and when they get turned out, and what is their work program, and how do you work them physically, and all of that stuff. I mean, and you come to our barn, you've worked on the same horses for years and years and years. I mean, a majority of my horses now are over the age of 20, and they're very sound, they're very healthy, they're doing their jobs and they're happy in their lives and whatnot. And that's the point, I think.
Yeah, it is.
It's become somewhat where the horses are disposable. I don't go to the horse show a lot anymore because I don't like to hear stuff like this. But when I go there, you hear, oh, my horse broke. I don't understand that. The horse got injured. The horse got hurt. That's when that happens to all of us. But when it happens to me, it's debilitating. I mean, I run home, and that's the only piece of this business that makes me ever really want to give it up, is the fact that in the process of doing it, we do hurt these horses. The interesting thing for me is I have a lot of horses that don't show and that don't jump, and the soundness and the health and the longevity of the horses is so directly related to what we ask them to do. So meanwhile, I'm at the barn with the horses that are 24 and 25 years old, that are sound, healthy, and happy, that don't jump and don't go to horse shows. And then I just took on this other gig where I'm seeing horses that are showing extensively and getting veterinary care extensively, and they're lame and sore and out of work. That it isn't that if you step back and you're honest with what you're seeing, it isn't that hard to figure out. We're asking them to do something that's not really what they're meant to do. And that's okay, but we have to do it in a respectful, intelligent, responsible way. I mean, we're their stewards. They can't speak up. We have to take care of them.
I love that. That's exactly right. But that also leads to the next question. Where do you get the good information on how to respect them and take care of them?
Ask.
Yeah, but
Ask.
you ask and you'll get
not you, but these other people, they want to read and they want to. I saw a great thing the other day that something to the effect of you're not listening to hear me, you're listening to respond to me. The people they're asking the right questions, but they're not watching. I didn't, nobody gave me this stuff. I found it. Great example. I was at a horse show in Cleveland, Ohio, hasn't happened for probably 40 years now. Anyway, it was a top horse show. Melanie Smith Taylor was there showing. and I followed her around and watched her school the horses and show and watch and watch and watch. And finally on Sunday, she stopped and she looked at me and she said, "Who are you and what are you doing?" And I said, "I'm so sorry. This is my name, and I was just interested in how you do things, so I'm watching." And long story short, she ended up inviting me to come and train with her for a week, and it was a great experience. But you don't see that now, and I'm sure it still exists. But it seems to be less and less. People are, waiting for things to be given to them instead of going out and getting after them. But the information is out there. The people with the knowledge are out there. You just need to harass them.
Oh, yeah. Stalk them like you did.
Exactly. I'll probably be
Well,
arrested these days.
you know, it, at least you're trying. If you get arrested, at least you have a record of trying.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I find that most of the horse owners I see all over the country are referring to this dilemma. Where do I turn to find good teachers? Where do I find a horse trainer? I mean, horse trainers, I've seen horse trainers where you're like, they should be banished, if not arrested, for what they're doing.
Yep.
But I also see parents for the same reason. They should be banished. They should have gotten certified before they had a child, Um, and and I think the amount of information that's out there is overwhelming everyone. I'll get on a website or search a web for some information, and I'm getting all sorts of different conflicting things, or most of them are like, well, you don't even know about this. Why aren't you mentioning this? That's a scientific mind inside of me. But most people aren't trained to be scientists. And they'll say to me, well, I've done some research on vitamin E or something like that. And I just close my eyes and just take a deep breath because they're not trained as researchers. So how do they find this information? And I'm still learning. I was telling you the other day how I found out about how fructose is triggered. So we actually make fructose inside our bodies. And that was fascinating. And I've dropped 4 pounds just with that piece of information in like 3 days. Um, it's just mind blowing that we don't know anything about anything, which goes back to what you're saying. Go back to the basics, what worked 100 years ago and your mentors taught you. That's what we really need to do. But where are you? I need, 50, 100 more Geoff Tealls out there to help other people understand how to connect to the horse. Doesn't matter what sport. It's just some basics. Do your job, keep it simple, play by the fundamentals.
Yeah. It's if you watch and if you pay attention and if you expose yourself to different, and this is where I think it's key, different live situations. Like you have to be able to read what's going on in and around what you're hearing and seeing. It comes back to feeling as well. In other words, if you go to the horse show and you spend a day and you watch people train horses or train riders, there's a lot of information that you're hearing. There's a lot of, results that you can follow and whatnot. But I think that you also need to really watch and listen to what your instincts are telling you and, what you're feeling about the situation. I think we've gotten so far away from feel in so many different aspects. We read, we listen, we talk, we do a lot of things, but most of it really is about feel. Okay, that was the result that I wanted, or wow, I feel better when I'm watching that person teach than I feel when I'm watching that person teach. So maybe that person won the class, but for me, I took a deep breath. I felt comfortable. I understood. I have a good feeling about it. So I think feel is a very important thing in whatever we do, and certainly with animals, because that's our only way to communicate.
There's so much information out there saying that our brain is not the only part of us that thinks, that we have these microbes in our gut and that gut feeling that we get. And nobody, well, I would say nobody, but most people haven't learned to listen to that, like you're saying. And I think if people who just stop, breathe, and allow to have information come in. And as you said before, truly listen to it without trying to come up with a response. And I know you don't know this, but I've got on a big yellow piece of sticky stuff with black lettering, it says listen before speaking. It's right there on my computer. I have it in multiple places. I have it on my dashboard because after all these years of being with the same woman in marriage, I'm finally learning that listening is more important than anything. And I've been doing it more in horses, I guess, than people. But and when you listen, it's not just with your ears, right? And that's the problem with texting or even with books. That it's black and white, but listen to what your mind is thinking. Just get that overall feeling, that connection. That's why when you see these horses at barns where there's no owner attached, but the grooms are there, the manager's there, they know these horses inside out. Not all of them are good, don't get me wrong. Some of them it's just a job. But those guys who really connect, I'm so in love with your grooms. Caesar the other day really knows his stuff and he just is connected. He's there, he's present. Surrounding yourself with good people, I think really makes you a better person. And, having good parents, and a lot of people don't have good parents these days. They don't have any mentors. They don't have school educators to help them. You're doing something online, aren't you? Are you still doing that online?
I did some stuff for a while. That started during COVID and that sort of faded away. But, I reach out and do different things, which I enjoy. Like, this is a great example. This is just fun to have a conversation about stuff,
Yeah. Who's going to hear this? Nobody. Or maybe somebody in Africa. Yes, I have people there in Australia, South America. One or two people are going to pick this up. And we might make a difference in just one person, right?
That's more than normal.
We're not here to shake up the world. But I've always appreciated you and your horses, even though we don't spend a lot of time talking. We're not beer drinking buddies. But we've known each other and we've respected each other for what we bring to the table. One of the things that you do that really opened my eyes and almost shocked me, if you will, is how you take your hay. And we talked about this the other day, and I'd love for you to talk to me as much as you can about this. But you take your hay and you put it in a tub and soak it for 12 hours. There are so many people out there who are afraid to soak hay. They don't understand why they're doing it. They think they're leaching out all sorts of nutrients. It's hard in the winter. They have all sorts of excuses. But tell me where you came upon doing this, why you did it, and all your experiences with it.
So that sort of came about because we ended up with a lot of ponies, lots of kids and lots of ponies. And ponies are always overweight. And we have very old ponies because that's the only kind of good pony there is. And so with old fat ponies, you get Cushing's and insulin levels. And anyway, so through necessity, I had to start to learn and understand about, blood sugar levels and health of the pony and insulin levels and all sorts of things. And I work with a vet bench actor who's awesome, and he's also old and grumpy. But we sort of learned about it together because it was not something that was really something that we did. Anyway, he did a lot of research, I did a lot of listening, and we found that by soaking the hay for 12 hours, you are basically getting rid of the sugar content. And the sugar content is what you have to be so careful about. While you're doing that, you're not affecting the nutritional value of the hay at all. You're getting rid of the sugar, which is healthy. A lot of older ponies have a cough and everything else, so you're certainly helping that. So it's something that we came up with a system. We bought these huge dollies, buckets that we put on dollies, and we feed hay, and then we put the next feeding of hay in the huge bucket, and it soaks for, 10 to 12 hours, and then we feed that and replace that. And there's always hay soaking and always hay getting fed. And we do blood work twice a year and different testing in between if, we find levels that we don't like. And the difference that that has made has been substantial. I mean, I feel safe going to the barn, that the ponies are going to be okay.
I'm putting a screenshot of what you just talked about. Can you see that?
Oh, there we go.
There they are.
Yeah.
That's on the website, The Horse's Advocate. It's just, it just makes so much sense to do it this way. I've taken a drain plug and put it in a wheelbarrow and soaked the hay in the wheelbarrow. And then I just turn the stopcock and all the water drains off, and the coffee colored water. It's just unbelievable how bad it is. But I get so many people who are worried about lack of nutrients, but so you've never seen a pony suffer from mineral or any other vitamin deficiency after doing that?
Their health has gone through the roof in a positive direction. They're healthier, they're happier. We feed only minimal amounts of low starch feed. And from doing the ponies, I ultimately changed all the horses to low starch feed also. So we feed very little grain, lots of hay. Ponies all get soaked hay. Some of the horses get wet hay. Some of the horses just get normal hay. It depends a little bit on what they're doing and what they need. But again, it's like everything else. The more you simplify it, the better the result, I think. And we don't do supplements. We don't do ulcer stuff because we have basically horses that are, happily doing a job that they've been trained to do. So there's the very little stress involved, and feeding them a very basic, simple diet, which I think, whether you're talking about, again, dogs, people, or horses, I think it's all the same thing. The simpler, the better, and the closer to nature, what she intended, the better. And so far, so good.
Yeah. Well, it's a challenge to get people to realize that they can do it on a working level. I mean, you're not pulling cannons over mountains into battle or riding from Florida up to Vermont with these horses. But most people are working their horses in a ring or in a sport that they feel like they need more energy. In reality, this excess sugar that we're feeding in these high sugar hays. And what we don't understand is these pastures are being seeded with hay seeds that have been modified to feed cattle for increased beef production or milk production. And they're throwing it out on the horse paddock, and they're just consuming higher quantities of sugar, both fructose and glucose. And soaking gets rid of it. But everyone says, oh, you shouldn't soak for more than 30 minutes. Or some people say 30 minutes to an hour. What made you just get on 12 hours? That was just Dr. Schachter's recommendation?
Yeah, that's where he started with it. And, it's not exactly 12. They get fed at 5 in the afternoon, and that hay soaks until about 5 in the morning. So it's right around 12 hours. It works well. And it took a while to come up with the system that made it easy. But once you get that system organized, you feed what has soaked and you replace it with what needs to be soaked. And then that's ready the next time. So it has become very automatic. It took us a while to, find the right. We had a lot of ponies when we started the whole system. We have less now, but we had to get those big tubs, and then we had to get a heavy duty dolly to wheel them around and whatnot. But it actually, like anything else, if you just really look at it and study it, you come up with a system that's easy. And then once the system's in place, it's just easy. This new team came in and they were like, what are you doing and why are you doing it and how hard is it? And, a week later, they're just doing it. It's not that big a deal.
Everyone's worried about hay becoming moldy. And here you are out in the Florida sun with these tubs. What's your experience with mold?
None.
Thank you. Thank you.
I
don't know if they heard you. Could you say that again?
None. It
because
lives
it's
in
in the water.
a room and then it comes out to get soaked and it hangs out in the sun. And, sometimes it's in the sun, sometimes it's in the shade, depends on what time of day it is, but it's not a factor that we worry about. We just, 12 hours later, we feed it. And horses love it.
You're only soaking what you feed. You're not
Yeah,
soaking and then storing it.
exactly. And the the horses and the ponies love it. I mean, they have become avid hay eaters as opposed to I'm bored and there's nothing else to eat, hay eaters. Um,
That's really fascinating because you'd think the higher sugar content hay would be tastier.
I think the dried up shriveled hay is less appealing than, it comes in, it's wet, it's cool, it's comfortable.
Yeah.
Anyway, it doesn't matter what we think, they're eating more of it, so they must like it.
I think in the near future, I'm going to be doing more podcasts on a microscopic level of why you should be soaking all hay. In fact, if you want to go back to 1960s, 1970s, when you were starting with horses, you probably remember most farms had pasture, and hay didn't is hard to find good hay. Most of it was
Yeah,
moldy. I remember ours came in tractor trailers, but back in the 50s, how many people had tractors and baling machines? It just wasn't that
right.
common. So it's a new food. And surprisingly, all of our injuries and lamenesses, as I was telling you the other day, it was the suspensory ligament epidemic that we're having. All these horses are lame from the suspensories. Um,
Mhm.
was it because we just couldn't feel them? I know when I went to vet school, I was taught how to feel suspensory, and I would feel them and press them, and they wouldn't be lame, but there would be a tendon or a collateral ligament that was a problem. You were talking about blind splints. Um, yeah, we might have missed the diagnosis, but it wasn't an epidemic like we have now.
No, nothing like that. But
No,
we didn't do to the horses what we do now, and we didn't expect of horses what we expect now. I mean, so I grew up fox hunting in the Genesee Valley where it's, mud up to their eyeballs.
sure.
And, you're galloping through that and everything else. But we were very careful about getting them fit. We were very careful about having a short season. We were very careful about not over hunting a horse. It's the exact opposite of what we do now. People don't, they either show or they rest. They don't. I remember a spell when I was starting in the business showing where they would keep the horses completely out of work so they wouldn't get fit, so they could work them hard at the horse show to get them tired. I mean, talk about a recipe for suspensory disease. Uh, but anyway, now they show so much, and we ask them to do so much, and the the job has gotten so specific and it's at such a high level that it's constantly reaching for perfection. Even in this business, I had my startup in the Buffalo area, and it was so nice because we could show locally and let the horses go medium at best and learn what we needed to learn and get ready. And then we would sort of show up at a big show and win all the classes and then disappear and
Mm.
let them do it medium again at home. It wasn't always having to, be reaching for this perfection. So the cost of the horses, the cost of the sport, the level of the competition, all of those things, people look at them as a positive, but there's such a negative, and it is so against what nature is about. But you have to step back in order to realize that and account for that in what you do and in your program. And I don't think people get to do that much.
It's one of the
And
biggest.
it's hard. Sorry, it's hard to say to a customer, yes, you're winning, and now you can't show because it isn't the right thing. People are afraid to ruffle feathers or rock the boat, and you can't. You have to know what is right, and then you have to do what is right, and that's our responsibility. Our
It's
responsibility is to the client.
it's going against human nature these
Yeah,
days.
right. That commercial, right? It's not nice to fool Mother Nature.
Yeah,
We're
but
we're proving it every day at the horse show, but nobody's hearing it.
if you're not an advocate for the horse, who is? Right?
Exactly.
And, you know, the Triple Crown in thoroughbred racing is kind of a good example. That is really stressful on horses. So they have to race one or two races before the Kentucky Derby. Then they have to do that. Then 2 weeks later, the Preakness, and 3 weeks later, the Belmont. And I was blessed with working on a horse that went out and won the Wood Memorial, which is the race before the Kentucky Derby, and then went out and won the Kentucky Derby. And it's like over $5 million yearling, and teeth are all the same, them and little ponies, they're the same. But that horse's brain was like on fire. I mean, hard to work with. Just, was he enjoying his job? I don't think so. And then he went out and won, came in second in the Preakness. And then they came back and they said, check the teeth one more time for the Belmont Stakes. And he was completely shot mentally. He was a totally different horse. And they pulled him from the Belmont because he wasn't ready. They said it was something else, but he never raced. He raced one more time after that and then retired to Kentucky. Working horses is stressful. And I listen to bodybuilders or trainers of bodybuilders, human bodybuilders, and they talk about training and feeding and building muscle and resting muscle. And I'm fascinated. I'll never forget this. One guy said, I've trained so many world-class bodybuilders. And, when I first started off training, my calves looked like little toothpicks. He says, my calves are huge. I mean, they're huge now. And I train them once a month. That's all they need. And we keep forgetting these horses are not machines where you have to do Monday through Friday or whatever and show on the weekend.
Yeah.
But it is driven by humans and not in the best interest of the horse. And so I'm grateful to know people like you and how you're helping other people understand that. It's really important.
Trying. Yeah. I mean, it gets more and more difficult as the sport, in quotes, evolves. I'm not sure if that's exactly the right word, but again, I just feel so fortunate to have come from a varied background and having had the opportunity to work with people that gave me a little more perspective on it. So,
yeah. And now we see all these horse shows all over the country, but diminishing number of horses in the census. And, well, I don't want to get down the path of what I think about my profession and how they're, not helping, but that's something I don't want to get into. You're veterinarian and other older veterinarians, we shake our heads and we just say, what's happened? So
the point has been lost, I think. It's not about, here's a great example. This was a very good vet, but I was at a big competition one time and the horse was a little bit funny the day before. And I called the vet and he said, well, you do this, and you'll be good to go. And I said, okay, great. That sounds awesome. And then we were sort of walking away and I said, well, will he be all right then on Monday? And he said, oh no, he'll be dead lame on Monday. Okay. Awfully glad I asked that question. And we ended up not showing the horse. And a couple of weeks later, he was sound and we went on. But it was a suspensory. It was the beginning of a suspensory. But again, they're treating to, again, I'm in a situation now where the amount of injecting and work done on these horses to keep them going. Are they sound? Yes. Are they healthy? No. Is it being done correctly? No. I mean, again, but the fame is so important now and the money is so important that it's hard to keep the perspective, I guess.
It's very hard. There's pressures. The pressures are mostly economic. Veterinarians and trainers have bills to pay. You were going over some of the bills that you have insurance, you have taxes, you have overhead that's just eating away from your profits. So you raise the price. You get people in here who say, look, I'm paying this much. I should be getting blue ribbons and winning championships. And so they start demanding more out of you as a trainer and out of us as veterinarians to get things done. And we don't have all the answers. It's the horse. We have to be looking at the horse and say, this horse really isn't enjoying what it's doing. The horse doesn't like you. The horse doesn't like the sport, And,
It's
and
the truth is all we've got, and as you said earlier, we have to be the advocates for the horse, and we have to do, or for the kids too. You have parents that are pushing kids, and I have to say to them, stop. Your
yeah,
kid, I've had this conversation. Why can't you find us a horse? Your child is a terrible rider. Cute kid, I like her. She's a terrible rider. We're going to have a miracle here, and miracles aren't going to happen fast. Or I have to say to them, it's too expensive. You can't afford what your child needs. So we're going to have to settle or wait. It takes time or money. If you're lucky, you've got both. But it's a balance. But the bottom line on it is you have to tell them the truth, because that's our job. It's not easy, but I'd rather say the truth and feel like I've done it correctly and get it over with. Rip the Band-Aid off. This is where we are. You spent all this money not working. This is the wrong horse. I feel terrible, but that's the way it goes. Let's see what we can do about it. Let's move on.
So basically, if you're teaching basketball and I came to you and you saw me dribble and try and shoot and jump, you just like, no, move on. Go do something else.
Not your sport. If you want to do it because you enjoy it, have at it. We're having a great time. I have a lot of students that do it just for that, Let's go to the horse show. We're going to lose. We'll have a good time. Great.
Yeah.
Managing expectations.
Well, this has been fascinating. What else do you want to talk about?
I'm about talked out.
So am I. Just before we go, I want to touch back on confidence one more time, because so many people are scared of horses. I'll walk in and they're absolutely petrified. You can tell it's not like they're cowering in the corner petrified, but they'll say to the horse, "It's okay, it's okay, it's okay. I'm coming up to you. It'll be okay. I love you. Don't worry." And you're like, holy moly.
Yeah.
Any advice on, to our listeners who love being with horses, but are scared they're going to be either hurt, or they've known somebody's gotten hurt or killed, or they're going to do the wrong thing and the horse isn't going to thrive, it's going to become sick or lame? What do you say to these people who just need a bolstering of confidence? What do you say?
No, I do well with that because I am that person, and I was that person. When I first started as a kid, as a rider, I was so worried that I wasn't going to do it right that I never could do it right. And every time I ride, I'm petrified. Riding scares the bejesus out of me. But you have to just do it or don't do it. Yes, I'm afraid. Yes, I've decided to do this. Okay, we've got to put that to the side and we've got to just do it. So um, I have a good sense for that with both the horses and the people that I'm teaching. And so I'm able to continually arrange things so it goes well to build that confidence. Like you can talk about it and that's all very good. And, I tell people all the time, just who do you know that you think is very confident? And they'll give me a name. And I say, okay, well, pretend you're them and imitate them. You can imitate your way into confidence sometimes. And you can talk about it in your example of being around horses. You can say, look, this is the wrong way to approach it. And boom, you have to do it. If you want to lead the horse over there, you've got to take the lead shank and you've got to lead the horse over there. Let's just do it and get over with. So again, it's about talking about it and then giving them examples and setting exercises up to sort of build that confidence, I think.
I see a lot of people trying to merge their cars onto the interstate, and they just slow down, and you can see that they're not confident at all, and can lead to an accident.
Right.
And
lack of confidence is the most dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, set the bar by setting the bar. Prove that you can do it.
Exactly.
Gosh, if Geoff can do it, then I can do it, right?
Exactly. I've made it this far.
Yeah. Well, thanks for spending your time with me. I appreciate it.
No, I've enjoyed it. That's a good conversation.
Yeah.
Cool.
eclectic, as they say.
There you go.
I will see you around the barn.
All right. I will be there. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Best of luck to you in the future, too. Thank you,
All right.
sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hey everyone, Doc T here. Thank you for listening to my content. Would you do me a huge favor? Would you please subscribe, comment, like, thumbs up, and give a star review? However it's presented to you, I want you to do that. There's two reasons. The first, of course, is to improve this product. This way I know what you like, what you don't like, what I can improve upon, what topics you want me to cover. But more importantly, it's also going to help others find me. And by doing that, you are now engaged in this mission of helping horses thrive in a human world. By you helping, we can reach others. And that I would be so grateful for. And remember, go to thehorsesadvocate.com for updates on this information. Thehorsesadvocate.com. And again, thank you so much for being here. Doc T out.